Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. Today our commander is Tetzin, Gnome Champion. Thanks to InKing727 for requesting this commander. Unfortunately, Tetzin doesn't have any lore associated with it, so there's no telling whether it's a creation of the Old Tech, a leftover of the Fomori, or some combination of the two. All we know is that it's a gnome, a Cosmium-powered metallic creature from Ixalan's core. It can combine with other artifacts to form a mechanical titan called the Golden Gear Colossus. In both forms, it's composed of many interconnected gears, suggesting that it might be some kind of universally reconfigurable automaton, able to interface with machines of any other sort. In any case, it does sort of feel like a spiritual successor to Mech Titan Core from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, so if you always wanted to build a Mech Titan commander deck, Tetzin is the gnome for you. I'm excited to share what I put together for it, but before we get started, let's go over my deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I built a whole deck for it. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward doing whatever my commander asks of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go toward supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play the game. So let's talk about our commander. Tetzin Gnome Champion is a 2/2 legendary artifact creature, gnome, for Jeskai mana, a blue, a red, and a white. It says whenever Tetzin or another double-faced artifact we control enters, we mill 3 cards, and then we may put an artifact card from among those milled into our hand. Also, we can craft Tetzin with 6 artifacts for 4 generic mana, meaning at sorcery speed, we can pay 4, exile Tetzin, and then exile 6 artifacts we control and or artifact cards from our graveyard, and if we do, we return Tetzin to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control as the Golden Gear Colossus. This is a 6/6 legendary artifact creature gnome with vigilance and trample that says whenever it enters or attacks, we transform up to 1 other target double-faced artifact we control, and we make 2 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens. So there's a lot going on with Tetzin. It wants us to run double-faced artifacts, most specifically the sort from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, which can be crafted in order to transform them like Tetzin itself. But Tetzin doesn't require the artifacts we use for its craftability to be double-faced, or even non-token. It can make its gears fit with any mechanism. Those double-faced artifacts do give us a solid benefit, however. Not only do they trigger Tetzin's mill ability, which, if we mill at least 1 artifact, functions more like a draw effect similar to the card Strategic Planning, we can also transform those double-faced artifacts with Tetzin's backside. It makes 2 gnomes and transforms an artifact DFC without us needing to meet that artifact's transform conditions, so we get to cheat that card's powerful backside into play. And the Golden Gear Colossus is a real titan, its ability triggering when it enters and when it attacks, as well as having a 6/6 body with 2 solid keywords. Like I said, a lot going on. Central to it all is artifacts, with enough double-faced ones to trigger Tetzin's front side and get value out of its backside, as well as plenty others to craft Tetzin in the first place. We also care about the graveyard, since our commander fills ours for us, and we need a Wincon to work toward, since the gnomes that Tetzin gives us likely aren't enough on their own. Is it possible to thread the needle between all these requirements and come out with a playable deck on the other side? Today's list is my answer. We spend the first half of the game playing out our artifacts, especially ways to trigger Tetzin so we can fill our graveyard in the process. We want a board covered in value pieces and a graveyard filled with craftables, plus enough blockers to keep our opponents from disrupting our plan too much while we get ourselves going. Once we have a solid double-faced artifact in play and a combination of enough artifacts in our yard and on our playmat to transform Tetzin, that's when we switch to Phase 2. It's fine if this costs us some of our more useful artifacts or even our artifact lands, as long as flipping Tetzin also flips one of our strong DFCs and sets us up for what comes next. Typically, this part of our game plan involves us playing out synergistic pieces and powerful mana sinks, since we often have at least 1 big mana producer by this point. At the same time, we usually have 1 or 2 of our cost reducers going, meaning we can often dump our hand onto the field and set ourselves up for a big swing in a turn or 2. Even if we have to use our forces defensively, that's just waves crashing against our parapet and giving us another turn to build an even bigger army. All the while, we're digging into our bin and reanimating our best artifacts, pumping our team, and preparing for the next big hit that'll end it all for our opponents. There are any number of routes to this endgame, and Tetzin is ready for all of them. It can adjust to all the options our deck gives us, converting its clockworks to spin up whatever engine we bring online.
We have tricks, of course, such as ways to use its backside to transform non-artifacts, or grant affinity to all our spells, or even hatch a host of Phyrexians to wind our sprockets until our enemies are ground in their teeth. Twisting the knobs of our silly machine rewards us by blowing up in our opponents' faces, and if our dials and gauges are in the red, all we have to do is switch to another one of our play modes, and we'll be back on track in no time. With each tick of its clockwork, Tetzin's adaptable nature shows us we can trust in its shifting gears. You'll enjoy this deck if you like being rewarded for careful sequencing with powerful board states that can erupt out of nowhere, or if you like the idea of dumping a bunch of spare parts onto your playmat and showing your pod how cool a contraption you can build from them. So, this Moxfield list we're going over in today's video is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section, filled with cards that I considered putting in this deck, but ultimately which did not make the cut for me. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like one of the things I've done and you want to go harder into it, or if you like this sort of spread out, let's try and do everything strategy, and you want to develop it, that considering section is a great place for you to begin when you build your own Tetzin Gnome Champion deck. So we're going to begin with the first component of our success. It is these double-faced artifacts. These are all artifacts or cards that make artifacts that have two sides to them, which means they will trigger Tetzin on his front side, giving us that sort of strategic planning, get an artifact out of the 3 cards we milled trigger, or they're things that we can flip with Tetzin's backside. We're going to start with Oediclan Landmark. This is a single white mana for an artifact that says when it enters we scry 2. Seems like it doesn't do that much for us, but if we were to craft it, which is to say transform it, or if we transform it with Tetzin, with the Golden Gear Colossus that is, it will give us something pretty nice on the backside. I just want to mention first that in order to craft it, we have to pay 2 and a white at sorcery speed and exile it and an artifact we control, or an artifact card in our graveyard. That's how craft works. It's always craft with something, and that something is either a permanent of those types or that type that you control, or that kind of card in your graveyard. So typically in this section, we're not going to be transforming our double-faced artifacts by paying for it, but sometimes we will. I'll try and make mention each time as to what we're looking for in this deck. Typically, Oediclan Landmark is not worth getting rid of another artifact in order to flip it over, but when it flips over, it is Oediclan Levitator, which is a 1/4 artifact creature golem with flying that whenever it attacks, it jumps one of our other attacking creatures. Gives that creature, without flying until end of turn, which is great for us to give to the Golden Gear Colossus, making it a 6/6 flying, vigilant, trampling attacker. Pretty sweet. So this is very nice for us and a very cheap way for us to trigger Tetzin's front side. So yeah, Oediclan Landmark, even though it seems like it would be one of the sort of lower value craft cards, and often it is, it works pretty well for us. Next we have the Enigma Jewel. This is another single mana craft card. This is a legendary artifact for a single blue that comes in tapped, and it taps for Soul Ring mana that we can only use to activate abilities. Seems like that wouldn't be that great, but we have lots of ways in this deck, lots of different things with abilities in this deck. Things like Tetzin itself. Every craft ability generally requires mana. Tetzin requires 4 of it. The Enigma Jewel gives us 2 of those. Already good. We've also, like I mentioned, got a bunch of different ways to, a bunch of different things that are mana sinks, so this can be a great thing for us to use for that. It's also fine if we don't want to keep this around, and so we can just craft with it when we craft Tetzin. So yeah. If we are to craft the Enigma Jewel, however, we have to craft with 4 or more non-lands with activated abilities, and we have to spend 9 mana to do so. So, to make it very clear, we never craft the Enigma Jewel. We use our commander's backside to flip it. And when we do, what we get is a legendary artifact that has each activated ability of the exiled cards used to craft it. That is to say, no activated abilities. We do not care about it. We just want to use this as something we can exile to craft with Tetzin. We want to keep it around for its mana, or if we do decide to flip it, it says whenever you activate an ability that isn't a mana ability, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. That actually is a very worthy thing for us to keep in this. For example, if we activate the ability of a clue token, we're paying the cost of that ability, paying 2 and sacrificing it. and then that ability's been activated. So we get to copy it with Locus of Enlightenment, which makes every clue crack for 2 cards, just as an example. Not every ability we activate is going to be something we want to double up, but if we have a board state where it's worth it to us to use one of our Golden Gear Colossus triggers to flip the Enigma Jewel rather than keeping the jewel around as a mana rock that only works on activated abilities, then yeah, pretty okay. No matter what, whether or not we do either of those, at the very least, the Enigma Jewel is only a single blue mana to trigger Tetzin, and then it sits on the battlefield waiting for us to use it to craft Tetzin with. Not too bad. Azor's Gateway is next. This is from original Ixalan block, it's Rivals of Ixalan. It's 2 generic mana for a legendary artifact that says pay 1 and tap to draw a card and then exile a card from your hand. And if cards with 5 or more different mana values are exiled with Azor's Gateway, we gain 5 life, untap it, and transform it. So I'm going to go ahead and say right now, yes, you might be able to do this over the course of the game, but I don't think it's worth it. I think ultimately Azor's Gateway costs 2 mana to trigger Tetzin, and then exists for us to flip Tetzin so that we can flip Azor's Gateway, because it's one of the several double-faced artifacts that we have in this deck that flips into a land. It becomes Sanctum of the Sun, a legendary land that taps to add an amount of mana of any one color equal to our life total. This is one of our huge mana producers in this deck. And the fact that it's not an artifact on both sides is fine. It's an artifact on its front side, and it's double-faced, so it's a double-faced artifact, so it works for Tetzin. So if we are able to get this out, it just sort of sits there on the battlefield. We don't ever want to activate this, because we don't want to have to throw away our cards when we have other ways to exile our cards. We don't need to try and build toward Azor's Gateway, even though it does give us 5 life if we are able to flip it the normal way, but it takes 5 turns to do so and different mana values, and it's just not what we're doing with it here. So it sits on the battlefield. Hopefully we get it out for cheaper because we have cost reducers, but maybe we get it out for free, or maybe we just pay 2, and that's fine with Tetzin's front side. And then if we flip Tetzin, Azor's Gateway is a great candidate for the first thing we flip with Tetzin, since Tetzin enters and immediately transforms something. So we don't have to go through all this rigmarole. That's the whole point of Tetzin, being able to flip our double-faced artifacts, especially into a land that gives us an enormous amount of mana right away. We might be able to just dump our whole hand right then if we tap this for blue, depending on whatever it is we may need. So yeah, Sanctum of the Sun, very good for us, and that's why Azor's Gateway is in here. Love this card, used to play this in Standard. Clay-Fired Bricks is next. This is a big drop in terms of quality from what we just saw, but it is another double-faced artifact that we do want to flip. So this is 1 and a white for an artifact that says when it enters, we search for a basic plains, reveal it, put it in our hand, and shuffle, and gain 2 life. So for 2 mana, we trigger our commander's front side, we gain 2 life, and we put a plains in our hand. That's pretty okay. Gives us a little bit of mana that helps us get a little closer to where we want to get to. Again, with Clay-Fired Bricks, we can craft it with an artifact for 5 and double white, but we're not paying 7 mana to flip this over. We're just going to use Tetzin's backside to do so. And when we do, we get an artifact called Cosmium Kiln. When it enters, we make 2 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens, which notably, it will not enter if we just flip it. Crafting something exiles it and then returns it to the battlefield transformed. Tetzin is just transforming our artifacts. So if we use Tetzin to transform Clay-Fired Bricks into Cosmium Kiln, we don't get Cosmium Kiln entering. And that's okay, because it does give all of our creatures +1/+1. So if we do, for some reason, happen to craft the bricks, then we're going to get 2 gnomes with it. But we don't have to worry about that, because if Tetzin is flipping one of our artifacts, if the Golden Gear Colossus is doing that, then we're also making 2 gnomes anyway with the Colossus. So we're not missing out on these 2 gnomes. We're just getting our +1/+1. Another card that is great for us to use to craft Tetzin with, or if we happen to let it sit around, then it does give us something that helps out our whole team later on. Next is Dowsing Device, another great one. 1 and a red for an artifact that says when it or another artifact we control enters, which is going to be happening an awful lot in this deck, up to 1 target creature we control gets +1/+0 and haste until end of turn. This can be really helpful to us. If we have this come into play after we craft Tetzin, Tetzin has just flipped one of our things. We then have this come in and target Tetzin with it. Tetzin gets +1/+0 and haste. We attack with Tetzin, and we can use Tetzin to just flip the dowsing device. However, it's not hard to transform on its own, because we then transform it whenever it triggers if we control 4 or more artifacts. Usually we don't have to wait for our commander to transform this. It also is worth noting that if this is in play and we activate Tetzin, and Tetzin enters and is the 4th artifact, then, either way, if Tetzin gets crafted and the Golden Gear Colossus enters, that will trigger here. We can then just go ahead and give it +1/+0 and haste. The likelihood that it hasn't already transformed at that point is not that high, but maybe it hasn't. Somehow we've done something crazy with it. In any case, when it transforms into a land called Geode Grotto, a cave that taps to add red, or we can pay 2 in a red and tap it at sorcery speed to give a creature haste and +X+0 until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts we control. That can be quite a lot of boost. So yeah, very nice for us. I really like how some of these cards are actually lands on the back, so we can get more mana for the more things that we're doing. I just like that design. It's cool. Next up is Lodestone Needle, one of our lower value double-faced cards in this deck. It's 1 and a blue for an artifact that we can flash in, and when it enters, we tap up to 1 target artifact or creature and put 2 stun counters on it. So this is actually a removal spell. It's enough of a, get rid of that creature as an attacker or blocker for a while that we can consider it interaction, especially because we can flash in it. This is also a nice way to trigger our commander on an opponent's turn. And we can craft it with an artifact for 2 and a blue if we wish, and it can flip into Guidestone Compass, an artifact that if we pay 1 and tap it, target creature we control explores, but only at sorcery speed. So this is not nothing, and if we're able to flip this with Tetzin, or with the Golden Gear Colossus I should say, that's great. But if we're just having to play this as a removal effect and a way to trigger our commander, and then we just craft it away in order to flip our commander, that's also totally fine. Similar is Spring-Loaded Saw Blades. This is 1 and a white for an artifact with flash that says when it enters, it deals 5 damage to a target tapped creature an opponent controls. So a little bit of direct damage for 2 mana. That also triggers our commander. That's okay. We can flip it with our commander or craft it with an artifact for 3 and a white, and it becomes a vehicle. It's Blade Wheel Chariot, a 5/5 vehicle that we only need to crew 1 in order to animate it, or we can tap 2 other untapped artifacts we control to make it an artifact creature until end of turn. So it crews for either 1 or tapping 2 artifacts, and we get to have it become an artifact creature. So again, not a terrible card to exile when crafting Tetzin into the Golden Gear Colossus, especially after we've gotten its value, but a 5/5 vehicle that's easy to crew and we don't even need to use creatures to do so, no slouch either. Sunder the Gateway is next. Sunder the Gateway is not an artifact spell, it's a sorcery. For 1 and a white, we can choose to either destroy target non-token artifact or enchantment an opponent controls and incubate 2, or we can incubate 2 and then transform an incubator token we control. Now what the heck does all this mean? Well, incubate is an ability that says create an incubator token with 2 1/1 counters on it and the ability to pay 2 generic to transform it. It transforms into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact creature. To make that more clear, this is an incubator token. It looks like this, generally. It's just an artifact token, and it has no abilities other than pay 2 and transform it. Now the reason that's notable is because when we incubate 2, we are putting 2 1/1 counters on this. So even though this is not a creature, it has 2 1/1 counters on it. We could then pay 2 at instant speed to transform it into a 0/0 artifact creature, Phyrexian, and it has those counters on it, so it becomes a 2/2. So in a way, we're sort of, incubate 2 is sort of get a 2/2 on layaway. Get a 2/2 that you have to pay 2 mana for in order to make it into a creature. Otherwise, it just sits there and is an artifact token. But because it is a transformable artifact token, it's a double-faced artifact, which means Sunder the Gateway is in this deck. We can just cast it to have something to trigger our commander, and then it will transform that immediately, or it could be a different incubator if we have another incubator. But it can just be, for 2 mana, we make a 2/2 artifact creature that is double-sided, so we're going to get to trigger Tetzin. Or we use this really as disenchant at sorcery speed. 1 and a white to destroy a token or a non-token artifact or enchantment that an opponent controls, plus it triggers our commander. And we can flip this with the Golden Gear Colossus if we want to. So we can turn our sort of sitting there being useless, holding a couple of 1/1 counters incubator token into a 2/2 creature. That seems fine. These incubate tokens are also great, whether or not they're creatures, as things we can exile away to craft Tetzin into the Golden Gear Colossus. That's why we have some instances of incubate in this deck. Next up is Thematic Compass. Also from Original Ixalan, this is 2 generic mana for an artifact that says pay 3, tap, and search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and shuffle. So for 3 mana, repeatedly, we can Lay of the Land. That's not nothing. We don't often do that in this deck, but sometimes, because at the beginning of our end step, if we control 7 or more lands, we transform the compass into Spires of Orazca. This is a terrific land that taps for colorless, or Maze of Iths, an attacking creature an opponent controls. We get to untap an attacking creature an opponent controls and remove it from combat. So we can just, as long as that creature can be interacted with, it doesn't have hexproof or something, we can just take it out of combat. It doesn't work on one of our creatures, but still pretty nice. So one more of these artifacts that triggers our commander. It gives us something to do and a little bit of a mana sink if we need it before we have gotten up to 7 lands. And we can flip this when we have fewer than 7 lands with the Golden Gear Colossus if we need to. Not usually necessary, but fine, and it gives us a sweet utility land. Good. Treasure Map is next. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact that if we pay 1 and tap it, we can scry 1 and put a landmark counter on it. Landmark counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by the treasure map. And then, as part of the same ability, after we put the landmark counter on it, if there are 3 or more landmark counters on it, we remove those 3 counters, transform it, and make 3 treasure tokens. So notably, if we transform the treasure map using the Golden Gear Colossus, it won't be as part of this ability, so we will not make these treasure tokens. It'll just transform. Either way, when it transforms, it becomes Treasure Cove, a land that taps for colorless or lets us tap and sack a treasure to draw a card. So not a terrible thing. For 2 generic mana, away we get to trigger our commander on the front side. And then over the next couple of turns, or including that first turn that we played it, we pay a mana into it, we get a little bit of scry, and eventually we get some treasures, and we don't have to use the Golden Gear Colossus to flip it over into the Treasure Cove. But if we want to, totally fine to do so. It's okay as a land. This is also another card that if we wanted to just exile it to craft Tetzin, that's also fine. It gives us good value, but not as much value as some of our other things, like, Azur's Gateway. So yeah, an okay use for the treasure map. Next is Braided Net. This is a great card. This is 2 and a blue for an artifact that enters with 3 net counters on it. Again, no inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by this card. If we tap it and remove a net counter from it, we can tap another non-land permanent, and its activated abilities can't be activated for as long as it remains tapped. So this is similar to the card we saw a moment ago, the Lodestone Needle. It doesn't put any stun counters on the permanent that it's tapping, but it can hit any permanent as long as it's not a land. So if we want to hit something that's not a creature or artifact, then maybe we don't care about it being tapped so much as we care about its activated abilities being unable to be activated. So we tap down a Planeswalker this way, its activated abilities can't be used, that seems good. We can keep doing this if we want to. Braided Net gives us good abilities to, if we tap down a creature, that it's like we have evasion with that creature, we don't have to worry about it untapping and blocking. If we tap down a creature, it can't attack us, etc. Lots of different things we can do with these net counters. And then we can flip the Braided Net either by crafting it with an artifact for 1 and a blue, or with the Golden Gear Colossus, and it becomes the Braided Kipu. This is an artifact that for 3 and a blue and tap, we can draw a card for each artifact we control, then put this into its owner's library 3rd from the top. So for 4 mana and tap, which is not a small amount of mana, we can draw a card for each artifact we control. Doesn't say non-token, and I do want to point out we have 51 artifacts in this deck, so this can be an enormous amount of card draw for us, including the fact that our commander is an artifact. So the Kipu goes back into the library, third from the top. By the time we draw it again, is our commander still the Golden Gear Colossus? Have we had to recast it? If so, well, then we're spending 3 mana to trigger it again, and we get our Braided Net, and we keep going with this. So this can be a lot of fun for us. Next is Brass's Tunnel Grinder. This is 2 and a red for a legendary artifact, referring to Admiral Beckett Brass, the character featured on the first commander deck I ever built. That was an Admiral Beckett Brass deck. I just love her. Just a really cool piece of art and a cool card, and yeah, anyway. So this artifact says when it enters, we discard any number of cards and then draw that many cards +1. So we're getting rid of anything in our hand that we don't want to be in our hand, and we're replacing all of those, and we're replacing the Tunnel Grinder that we just cast. This is a pretty nice way for us to get, if we have artifacts in our hand that we might want to cast, but we definitely want to use to exile to flip one of our craft cards, particularly our commander. This is a good way to get those cards into our graveyard as well, and to draw some new stuff. Also, at the beginning of our end step, if we descended this turn, descended meaning if a permanent card was put into a graveyard from anywhere, into our graveyard. So that's any permanent card, but it does say permanent card, so tokens don't count. But if we milled a card, if we discarded a permanent card, if something died, any of those things count as descending. If we descended this turn at the beginning of our end step, we put a bore counter on Brass's Tunnel Grinder. Again, just used by this card, doesn't have any inherent mechanical meaning. And then, if there are 3 or more bore counters on it, we remove those counters and transform it into Teklutan, the Searing Rift. This is a legendary cave that taps for red, and says whenever we cast a permanent spell using mana produced by Teklutan, we discover X, where X is that spell's mana value. Discover means we exile cards from the top of our library until we find a card, a non-land, with mana value equal to or less than the discover value, which is that spell's mana value. We can then either cast that spell or put it in our hand, and then everything else we exiled goes on the bottom of our deck in a random order. So Teklutan gives us a way to make red mana and also get a free spell every turn when we use this mana. So puts cards in our hand, puts cards into play. Both sides of this are great, and Brass's Tunnel Grinder is another one of these cards that is excellent if we can flip it with the Golden Gear Colossus. So yeah. Next up, we have another Incubate card. It's Chrome Host Seed Shark. This is 2 and a blue for a 2/4 Phyrexian Shark with flying. Gross. It says whenever we cast a non-creature spell, we incubate X, where X is that spell's mana value. So we just make incubator tokens. Every time we cast a non-creature spell, we have a solid number of creatures in this deck, but an awful lot of other spells as well. So every time we cast a non-creature spell, we're going to get a token that either is going to trigger Tetzin or be able to be flipped with the Golden Gear Colossus. Great. Next up, we have a card whose name I've never actually read. It's Motzalantli. Yeah, Motzalantli. There we go. The Great Door. This is similar to Azor's Gateway from the original Ixalan set. Rivals of Ixalan. This is the LCI version of it. For 3 generic mana, we get a legendary artifact that we can tap to draw a card and discard a card. Pretty okay. A little bit of selection. Everyone likes a loot. Gives us a way to put cards in our graveyard for Tetzin. Sounds good. We can also pay for and tap to transform Motzalantli. And if we do, we can only do this if there are 4 or more permanent types among cards in our graveyard. So this deck fills our graveyard with so many different things, mostly artifacts because we have lots of artifacts, but because of the way our commander puts those things in our graveyard, oftentimes it's kind of a split between artifacts and lands and everything else we may have. We've got a good balance of different permanent types in this deck, so it's not too hard to be able to do this on its own, but of course, we don't have to transform it with its own ability if we want to transform it with just the Golden Gear Colossus. And when we do, it flips into the Core, a legendary land with Fathomless Descent, a tap ability that adds an amount of mana of any one color equal to the number of permanent cards in our graveyard. In my testing of this deck, it is not uncommon by the time you're able to flip this card to have 10 or more cards in your graveyard, most of which are lands, to be honest. So being able to tap this for 5 mana, 8 mana, 12 mana, whatever it may be, and it's colored mana on top of that, very, very powerful in this deck. Much the same way that Azor's Gateway is powerful. So yeah. Next we have Sunbird Standard. We're going back from one of the powerful cards to one of the less powerful ones. This is just a manalith. It's 3 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color. That's already fine for us as a way to accelerate ourselves, but the fact that it's a double-faced artifact helps us trigger our commander's front side, and it's something we can flip with the back side, because it crafts with 1 or more of what? Well, it doesn't say. It's 1 or more permanents we control or cards in our graveyard. That's all it cares about for 5 generic mana. And when we do that, it flips into Sunbird Effigy. This is an artifact creature, a bird construct, with flying, vigilance, and haste, and a power and toughness each equal to the number of colors among the exiled cards we use to craft it. So then we can tap it for each color, for 1 mana of each color among the cards that use to craft it. So if we used all 3 colors in our deck to craft this thing, it'll tap for 3, and it's a 3/3 flyer with vigilance and haste. All of that is very nice, and we just don't care about it. we care about is the fact that this is a double-faced artifact that we can use for mana, or we can exile in order to transform our commander. Losing this is not any worse than losing any one of our artifact lands, but it's fine if we want to keep it around just to produce mana. Same thing with the artifact lands. So that's why it's in this deck. Typically, we are not crafting this, but if we want to, we sure can, and we're going to get a bird. Seems okay. The Everflowing Well is next. This is great for us. 2 and a blue for a legendary artifact that says when it enters, we mill 2 and draw 2. So it's replacing itself and giving us an extra card, as well as putting 2 cards in our graveyard, which we might be able to use for crafting or anything else. And it has Descend 8. At the beginning of our upkeep, if there are 8 or more permanent cards in our graveyard, we just get to transform this for free, and it becomes the Myriad Pools, a legendary artifact land. Notably, it's an artifact. So even if it's transformed, we can exile this as part of crafting with Tetzin, because all we have to do is exile an artifact. This is still an artifact. So it transforms, it taps for blue, and whenever we cast a permanent spell using mana from it, up to 1 other target permanent we control becomes a copy of that spell until end of turn. So this is kind of cool. It gives us the ability to cast, let's say, Sunbird Standard. If we use the Myriad Pools mana to do so, we might have our treasure map in play that we don't want to use for its ability this turn. We can have that treasure map become a Sunbird Standard until end of turn. We can tap it for mana. That seems pretty good. It's a great way for us to use some of our artifacts that, once they're in play, don't really do anything for us or don't have any abilities that we can tap them for. We can turn those into something else until end of turn, thanks to the Myriad Pools mana. That seems pretty good. Next up is another original Ixalan card, one that I really love, as you know, because I love Admiral Beckett Brass. This is the Conqueror's Galleon, pardon me. For 4 generic mana, we get a 2/10 vehicle that accrues for 4, and it says when it attacks, exile it at the end of combat and return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. So that does mean it has to survive combat. But with 10 as its toughness, it's not that unlikely. So we want to be able to crew the Galleon, attack with it, and then it'll come back as the Conqueror's Foothold, which is sweet because this is not a normal transform from the regular Ixalan set. This is it getting exiled and then returning to the battlefield, which means it attacks and it's tapped, then it goes to exile and it returns to the battlefield untapped as the Conqueror's Foothold. It's a land that taps for colorless, or it gives us a lot of different other options. For 2 and tap, we can draw and discard, so put another card in our hand and get something in our graveyard we can use for later. For 4, we just do a straight up draw, and for 6 and tap, we can return any card from our graveyard to our hand. This is a straight regrow. It's just, it doesn't have to be a permanent, nothing. It's a lot of mana, but we're going to have plenty of mana later on in the game to get back the things that we may have lost. Maybe we have several different ways to recur our artifacts. Not so many for our creatures. This can get us back an enchantment if we need to. Whatever we want. It can get us back a land if we're looking for another land, I suppose. So yeah, I love the Galleon, and of course, it's a double-faced artifact, so it's going to trigger our commander's front side, and if we want not to risk it, we could transform it with the Golden Gear Colossus to make it into a land that way. Next is Elesh Norn. Elesh Norn is not an artifact. She is double-sided though, and on the other side, she's an enchantment. So why is she here? Well, you'll see. Elesh Norn is a legendary Phyrexian Praetor who is a 3/5 with Vigilance for 2 and double white, who says whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage, not even combat damage, to us or one of our permanents, that source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay a generic mana. So that's every instance of damage dealt to us or our stuff costs the damage source's controller 2 life unless they're paying for it. So this is a great deterrent for us being attacked, for us being for having our creatures being blocked even. You know, if we're attacking someone and they're tapped out, they're going to lose 2 life for each thing that hurts our stuff, so maybe they don't want to do that. So yeah, Elesh Norn protective for us, but also if we pay 2 and a white and sacrifice 3 other creatures, we exile her and return her to the battlefield transformed under our control at sorcery speed. So this is a little bit of a graveyard effect. It'll let us put some of our creatures, our artifact creatures particularly, in our graveyard, and if those creatures are non-token, then we can use them to craft with from our graveyard. If they are tokens, well, they're gone forever, but we've gotten rid of some tokens, which didn't cost us that much to get in the first place, and we're able to flip Elesh Norn. And she does the Argent Etchings, which is a saga. If you haven't seen sagas before, the way they work is they come in and you get a lore counter, and it triggers the chapter based on the number of lore counters you have. So it'll be chapter 1. The next turn, at the start of our pre-combat main phase, we get a second lore counter and we trigger the second ability. The turn after that, at the start of our pre-combat main phase, we'll get a third lore counter and we'll get our third ability, and normally with a saga, once that ability has resolved, the saga is sacrificed. But with this one, not so much, and we'll see why in a moment. So the first chapter ability, what happens the very moment we flip Elesh Norn, is we incubate 2 5 times and then transform all incubator tokens we control. So incubate 2 means make one of these incubator tokens and put 2 counters on it, and we do that 5 times. So we're going to make 5 double-faced artifacts, meaning if Tetzin is in play, we're going to trigger Tetzin 5 times, milling 3 and having the option to put an artifact from among those milled cards into our hand 5 times. And all of those incubators get transformed. So even if those are the only ones we have, we suddenly have 5 2/2s in play. That's pretty great. Our second chapter is all of our creatures get +1/+1 double strike until end of turn. It's time for us to swing in. We have 5 3/3s with double strike. That seems like a pretty strong attack we can make. And then our third chapter is we destroy all other permanents except for artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians. So we do have a few cards in this deck that are permanents that aren't artifacts, lands, or Phyrexians, but not that many of them. And if we do, we have, like you saw with the Conqueror's Galleon, at least one way to get them back. So this is one of our board wipes. We do have to wait for it, and we've got to work for it, but it's a pretty solid one. And then, as part of this, after that destruction, we exile the Argent Etchings and return it to the battlefield as Elesh Norn again. We get to get our 3/5 Vigilance with this protective ability back. Protective or punishing ability, if you like. Which means she's back in play. We can activate her again right away if we've got 3 creatures to sacrifice and 3 more mana, which in all likelihood we do, because all of our Phyrexians and artifacts, of which these incubators are both, didn't die. So if we've got that 3 mana, we can do this immediately again, trigger our commander 5 more times, because our commander didn't die since it was an artifact, and if its front faces up, then we're going to trigger it again, and yeah, we get a lot out of Elesh Norn this way. Being able to make those incubator tokens is why she's in this section. So yeah, pretty cool. Is there a way for us to flip Elesh Norn from her front side to her back side or vice versa with the Golden Gear Colossus? Not on its face. Elesh Norn is either a creature or an enchantment. But is there a way to turn her into an artifact? Yes, there is. And it's in our deck. We have a couple of different ways actually in the considering section, but only one that actually made it to the deck, and we'll talk about it once we get there. Just want to bring it up. Next is Thousand Moons Smithy. This is 2 and double white for a legendary artifact that says when it enters, we make a white gnome soldier, not just a gnome, but a gnome soldier artifact creature token, with power and toughness each equal to the number of artifacts and or creatures we control. It doesn't matter that it has 2 creature types, but it's notable that our gnomes in this deck are all 1/1s, and our gnome soldiers are only made by the Thousand Moons Smithy, and they are enormous. They power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts and or creatures we control. So these are pretty big. We get one of those as part of casting the Thousand Moons Smithy, so it's kind of like a creature spell, sort of, even though they are still cute little gnomes. And then at the beginning of our first main phase, we may tap 5 untapped artifacts and or creatures we control, and if we do, we transform Thousand Moons Smithy into Barracks of the Thousand, a legendary artifact land, so remember, it remains an artifact. It's one on this side and on this side in case it's relevant to us. That taps for white. And whenever we cast an artifact or creature spell using mana produced by Barracks of the Thousand, we create the same one of these. Another little gnome soldier with power and toughness, each equal to the number of artifacts and or creatures we control. Pretty good. So we can keep making more of these, one at every turn, that we're untapping and using the mana for Barracks of the Thousand with. We can flip it without having to use the Golden Gear Colossus. But we can also use the Golden Gear Colossus. If we want to, let's say the Golden Gear Colossus is already in play, with that face up, we cast Thousand Moons Smithy, it enters, and we get one of these gnome soldiers, the big ones. Then we attack with our Colossus, use it to flip the Thousand Moons Smithy, and now we've got the land form of it. And post-combat, we can cast an artifact or creature spell and just make another one of those gnome soldiers. So big, huge things. It is also worth noting that it says when you use this ability at the beginning of your first main phase, you can tap 5 untapped artifacts and or creatures you control. That can include the Thousand Moons Smithy itself. The problem is, if you do that, when it transforms, it remains tapped. So you can't then tap it for mana and get a little friend out of it. So just an option for you there. Next is Master's Guide Mural. This is 3, a white and a blue for an artifact that says when it enters, we make a 4/4 white and blue golem artifact creature token. So for 5 mana, we get a 4/4 and a trigger to Tetzin. That seems okay. If we craft it with an artifact for 4 double white and a blue, or if we just transform it with the Golden Gear Colossus, it becomes Master's Manufactory. An artifact remains an artifact that lets us tap to make one of those 4/4 white and blue golems, but only if it or another artifact entered the battlefield under our control this turn. Very difficult, or rather very easy for this to be the case. Not usually very difficult for us to be able to get this to happen. And worst case scenario, even though it's flipped, maybe we get a golem out of it, and then we use this to craft Tetzin into the Golden Gear Colossus. Totally okay as well. Last of all, we have the Might Stone and Weak Stone. This is 5 generic mana for a legendary artifact Power Stone. We'll talk about that in a moment. It says when it enters, we choose to either draw 2 cards or for target creature to get -5/-5 until end of turn. So this is a removal spell or a draw spell, whatever we need when it first comes in. Then it taps for 2 colorless mana, and it says this mana can't be spent to cast non-artifact spells. That is the clause for Power Stone mana. That's why I said I'd bring it up. Power Stone mana is usable, the best way to think of it is in 3 ways. First is, you can use this to activate abilities. Any ability that requires mana put into it, well, that's not a non-artifact spell. Or rather, that's not a non-artifact spell, it's an ability. So you can tap the Might Stone and Weak Stone as part of paying to craft Tetzin and flip Tetzin over for that 4 mana that it requires. That's great. You can also use this to pay costs if there's mana costs of some other spell or ability. For example, if someone's running Smothering Tithe, you can tap the Might Stone and Weak Stone to pay the 2 with this 2 mana. That's fine. It's still not a non-artifact spell, so you're fine with it. And the last thing you can do with this is cast spells, as long as those spells are artifact spells. Because it says it can't be spent on non-artifact spells, but it can be spent on artifact spells. We've got a lot of artifacts in this deck, including our commander, which we don't want to cast our commander with the Might Stone and Weak Stone because our commander doesn't have any generic mana costs in its cost. Unless we're casting it from the command zone for the second time and we're using this to pay the commander tax, that's totally fine as well. So this is mana we're going to be able to use in a lot of ways, just not as universally as, say, a Soul Ring. That's totally fine. Now I know you're thinking, there's nowhere that it says this transforms. And it's not a modal double-faced card, so how is this in this section? It's because this is a meld card. There's 3 kinds of cards that are double-faced. There's non-modal, there's modal, and non-modal is what transforming double-faced cards are now called. There's modal double-faced cards where you can play either side, just depending on which side you want to cast. And the third kind is meld cards. Meld cards are half of a really big card. The only way to do that is you have to have both permanents that meld together in play at the same time, and to follow the instructions of whichever one of those cards tells you how to meld it. But when you do, you get to exile both of those cards and they return combined as a melded permanent, which is a big, awesome, cool thing, which we'll talk about more when we get to the card that actually has the meld ability, which is Urza the Lord Protector. But in any case, this is a double-faced card. It just can't be flipped on its own. So this is something we cannot flip with Tetzin. Even if we were to want to, meld cards cannot be transformed, cannot be flipped, except with their meld ability, which is them entering melded, I should say. So we cannot use the Golden Gear Colossus to flip over the Might Stone and Weak Stone. Don't even think about it. Fine though, it still gives us a trigger for Tetzin and gives us a lot of good value. Yeah, so that covers our double-faced artifacts section. I want to talk now about our graveyard section. These are cards that put cards in our graveyard, either themselves or other cards, and help us to, since we have those cards in our graveyard, if those cards are artifacts, we can use them to craft our commander. So we're going to start with Wayfarer's Bauble, a card that I love in any non-green deck, basically. Some green decks, even. This is a single generic mana for an artifact that if we pay 2, tap, and sack it, we can Rampant Growth. Search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. Great in our Jeskai deck, which wants us to have more basic lands in play, wants us to be able to get access to all 3 colors of our mana, and wants us to be able to do it without too much fuss. Wayfarer's Bauble is a genericized Rampant Growth that costs us 1 more to get into play. So that means we pay 1, and then whenever we can pay 2, we're going to get to trade it, put it in our graveyard, and put one of our basics into play tapped, and that's great. There are ways for us to recur this in this deck so we can keep doing it, or we can just exile it as part of crafting it with our commander or anything else we're crafting with artifacts, and it works great for any of those uses. Very cheap, very effective for us, love it. We've seen Brass's Tunnel Grinder. It lets us discard cards, which puts them in the graveyard. We haven't seen Imri yet. Imri, originally from Throne of Eldraine, my favorite set, is 2 and a blue for a 1/2 legendary Merfolk Wizard with affinity for artifacts. Imri costs a generic mana less for each artifact we control. Meaning, if we have 2 artifacts in play, Imri costs a single blue, but you can't go below that because affinity only decreases the generic mana cost. But for a single blue, up to 2 and a blue, we get a 1/2 Merfolk Wizard that when she enters, we mill 4 cards. That's already helping us, putting things in our graveyard. But also, Imri is one of our best ways to recur things, because we can tap her and choose an artifact card in our graveyard, and we can cast it this turn. We still have to pay for it, and we still have to do it at the normal timing rules, but Imri giving us the ability to treat our graveyard like it's a second hand for our artifacts at least once per turn is very powerful for us, in addition to just putting cards in our graveyard for us. Great. We've seen Matzalantli. Matzalantli can let us draw and discard on the front face. That helps us put things in our graveyard. Mirrodin Besieged is next. This is 2 and a blue for an enchantment that says, as it enters, we choose Mirren or Phyrexian. If we choose Mirren, whenever we cast an artifact spell, we make a 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature token. Oftentimes, this is what we're choosing in this deck, but not always. If we choose Phyrexian, At the beginning of our end step, we draw a card and then discard a card, so a nice little loot. And then, if there are 15 or more artifact cards in our graveyard, target opponent loses the game. So this is not a we win the game, unless of course there's only one opponent left, but we can just zot someone out of nowhere and they're just done. Oftentimes, this happens if we're playing Mirrored and Besieged late game, and we have encountered a board wipe or something like that, and we've lost an awful lot of our artifacts. They've ended up in the graveyard, or it could be the case that this is post us playing Elesh Norn and just milling a whole bunch of things into our graveyard using Tetzin's trigger from all of those incubator tokens. Also a possibility. Doesn't come up that often that we have 15 artifacts in our graveyard and we're just not using them for anything, but it's a possibility. And if we cast Mirrored and Besieged and choose Phyrexian, we know that it's likely already happened. So we go to our end step, draw, discard, and one of our opponents loses the game. And we'll do that again the next turn as well, again and again, until we're the last person standing or we're not. So Phyrexian is not a terrible choice for us in this deck. Usually though, if that's not the situation we're in, I like to choose Mirren because it gives us a reward in the form of this 1/1 artifact creature token whenever we cast any artifact spell, of which we have so many. So yeah, pretty good. Next is Repurposing Bay. This is our birthing pod for the deck. 2 and a blue for an artifact that says pay 2, tap, and sack another artifact to search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrificed artifact's mana value. It doesn't say or less, it's got to be exactly 1 more than the one you sacrificed. Then put that card onto the battlefield and shuffle, but only as a sorcery. So with cards like Repurposing Bay, what I like to do is have my deck list in my hand or on my phone or something like that, organized by mana value with just all the artifacts. So I know what I'm able to look for. That way I'm not like sorting through my deck being like, oh, don't I have another 3-drop in here? Something along those lines. It's very nice, however, to be able to sacrifice token artifacts with Repurposing Bay. If you have like an incubator token or one of those mirror tokens we just saw in play, Repurposing Bay for 2 mana can sack that 0 mana token or 0 mana value token and go find you your Wayfarer's Bauble or your Soul Ring, whatever you may need. It goes all the way up to mana value 7 in this deck, I believe. So you can walk your way up. So Repurposing Bay is a great way to not just get yourself a better artifact than what you have in play, but also take the artifact you had in play, assuming it wasn't a token, and put it into the graveyard so you can use it for crafting purposes. Sai Master Thopterist is next. 2 and a blue for a 1/4 legendary human artificer that says when you cast an artifact spell, make a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. So 2 and a blue artifact, whenever you cast an artifact, you get a 1/1 flyer. That's better than Mirrored and Besieged's Mirrored ability. 2 and a blue, when you cast an artifact, get a 1/1 without flying. So Sai is pretty good, but of course it's easier to kill creatures than it is to kill enchantments. However, Sai doesn't end there. For 1 and a blue and sacrifice 2 artifacts, we can draw a card. So this is a great way to get artifacts into our graveyard or use up our tokens if we don't have any other use for them. Pretty good. We've already seen the Everflowing Well. It enters, we mill 2, which puts things in our graveyard, but also draws us 2. Arcade Ganon from the Fallout Commander decks is next. This is 2, a white and a blue for a 2/3 legendary human doctor that says tap to draw a card and then discard a card and put a quest counter on Arcade. Quest counters, again, no mechanical meaning, just used by this card. But a little bit of a loot, puts things in our graveyard, gives us some selection, not bad. And then Arcade has an ability for Auld Lang Syne. Once during each of our turns, we can cast an artifact or a human spell from our graveyard with mana value less than or equal to the number of quest counters on Arcade. Meaning, similar to Emery, we can cast any artifact spell in our graveyard, except it has to have a mana value less than or equal to the number of quest counters on Arcade, so we want to do this more and more. However, we can also get human spells, of which we have several in this deck. Looks like there are 7 humans in this deck, including Arcade, so 6 other cards. So lots and lots of things can come back, we just have to sort of build our way up to it. Not bad. Conqueror's Galleon, as Conqueror's Foothold, can let us draw and then discard, which is a solid way of putting things in our graveyard. Elesh Norn is a board wipe, which puts things in our graveyard, but also on the front side gives us the ability to sacrifice 3 other creatures. That's the real reason why she's in this section. Argentum Masticore is next. I really like this card. 5 generic mana for a 5/5 artifact creature, Phyrexian Masticore. So this is a creature, and even if it weren't an artifact, it wouldn't die to Elesh Norn's board wipe. Just saying. This is a 5/5 with first strike and protection from multicolored. Protection, so very good in all the ways that you want it to keep your creature safe. But remember, protection means it can't be blocked. So if you have an opponent with nothing but multicolored blockers, Argentum Masticore gets a free attack on them. Pretty good. It also says at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this creature, unless you discard a card. Either of those ways, put things in our graveyard. And when you discard a card this way, destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to the mana value of the discarded card. So Argentum Masticore either puts itself in the graveyard or turns one of your non-land, or turns one of your cards in your hand into a removal spell every turn. So pretty solid. Want to be able to make sure you can keep filling up your hand, but eventually the Masticore is going to go away itself, and that's fine too. Finally, we have 3-fold Thunderhulk. This is 7 generic mana for a 0/0 artifact creature, Gnome. It's a Gnome. Gnomes are important. That enters with 3 1/1 counters on it. And it says whenever this creature enters or attacks, create a number of 1/1 colorless Gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. So this comes in, and it has its own Titan trigger when it enters or attacks. It'll come in with 3 counters on it and make 3 Gnomes. That's pretty good already to supplement what we're doing with the Golden Gear Colossus. And it says if we pay 2 and sack an artifact, we can put a 1/1 counter on it. So gives us an outlet for whatever artifacts we may need to sacrifice, especially if we have an awful lot of mana, like from the core, for example. If we've tapped that and we have mana we need to spend, but it's of a color that doesn't work for our hand, or we're just out of cards in hand, out of spells in hand, we could pump it into the 3-fold Thunderhulk, sacrificing Gnomes or Mirror, or perhaps the Gnomes that our opponent, that our commander rather, creates with the Golden Gear Colossus. And we just make the Thunderhulk bigger, attack with it, and we get our Gnomes right back. Pretty good. A very nice way of using this as a sack outlet and therefore a mana sink. Thunderhulk is a big boy. And that covers our graveyard section and most of the stuff that I think of in terms of this deck's game plan. Hey, did you just like the video? Nice. Appreciate it. I'm just kidding. You don't have to like the video just because I'm asking for it. I appreciate you being here either way. But there is more where that came from. So we're going to talk now about our sections of vegetables, the support sections for this deck, starting with our card advantage section, which as usual, I've used the word draw to represent just as a shorthand tag. It doesn't mean all these cards actively do the draw card action. It just gives us access to more things we can do. For example, Clayfired Bricks doesn't draw us a card, but it does search us up a basic land, or basic plains rather, and put it in our hand. So yeah, pretty okay. Thematic Compass, we can activate it and find ourselves a basic land of any type that we want with its Lay of the Land ability. Treasure Map, on the backside, we can sacrifice a treasure to draw a card. Braided Kipu's backside of the backside of Braided Net, Braided Kipu, lets us draw quite a lot of cards and then tuck it back into our library. Brass's Tunnel Grinder lets us draw cards equal to the number that we discard when it enters, +1, and gives us a Discover ability when we use its backside's mana to cast spells, permanent spells. Forensic Gadgeteer is next. 2 and a blue for a 2/3 Vidalcan Artificer Detective. Not an artifact creature, just a creature. That says whenever we cast an artifact spell, we investigate, meaning we make a clue, which is an artifact that if we pay 2 and sack it, we draw a card. Making a bunch of clues, which we will do a lot in this deck if the Forensic Gadgeteer comes out early, gives us a great mana sink and gives us the ability to draw cards. But why would we pay 2 for them when the Forensic Gadgeteer says activated abilities of artifacts we control cost 1 less to activate, but to a minimum of 1 mana? So we can crack our clues for a single mana. We can also craft our commander for 3 mana rather than 4, because that's an activated ability and our commander is an artifact. So Forensic Gadgeteer doesn't just draw us cards, also helps out with our commander and anything else that we might want to activate that is an artifact, like our craft abilities. Repurposing Bay, we've already seen. It doesn't draw us a card, but it lets us go find another artifact, mana value 1 greater than the sacrificed artifact, and put it right into play. It's pretty good. Sai lets us pay 1 and a blue and sack 2 artifacts to draw a card. The Everflowing Well enters, has us mill 2, but also draw 2. Conqueror's Galleon, on the backside, we can just pay 4 and tap it to draw a card. It's okay. Next we have Crystal Skull Isu Spyglass. This is from the Assassin's Creed set, if you haven't seen it before. It's 2 and double blue for a legendary artifact that lets us look at the top card of our library at any time and lets us play historic lands and cast historic spells from the top of our library. Historics are artifacts, legends, and sagas. The only saga we have in our deck is the backside of Elesh Norn, so it doesn't count. But Elesh Norn is legendary, and we've got a lot of artifacts in addition to our legends. So giving us access to the top of our library is very, very powerful. It's like having an 8th card in hand, so that's why it's card advantage. In addition, Spyglass taps for blue. Pretty good. Mana Rock on top of card advantage. Next up is Geology Enthusiast, a really cool card from the Brothers' War. This is 3 and double blue for a 2/5 human artificer that says at the beginning of your end step, make a tapped Power Stone token. So it does come in tapped, but it is a Power Stone, which is the same kind of mana as the Might Stone and Weak Stone. Lets us tap it for colorless mana, only 1, however, that can't be spent to cast a non-artifact spell, but can be used for paying for costs, for activating abilities, and of course to cast artifact spells. So a little bit of ramp every single turn. What do we use that mana for? Well, maybe we use it for Geology Enthusiast's ability. 6 generic mana, quite a lot, to draw a card and put a 1/1 counter on the Enthusiast, but that's still pretty okay. Build up our friend, draw cards, especially when we have a big amount of mana to pump into and just fill up our hand again. Yeah, pretty good. Platoon Dispenser is next. This is also from the Brothers' War. 5 generic mana for a 4/6 artifact creature construct that says at the beginning of your end step, if you control 2 or more other creatures, draw a card. So easy in this deck when we have a lot of token creatures and plenty of creatures in general. Just a free card at our end step. We can also get ourselves closer to that by paying 3 and a white and making a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token. Counts toward this if we've activated it before the end step, and is another good mana sink for us. Platoon Dispenser also has Unearth for 2 and double white, which means while it's in our graveyard, we can pay 2 and double white to cast it from the graveyard. It will enter, it will have haste, and at the end step, we have to sacrifice it, or rather, we have to exile it, and if it would be moved off the battlefield to any other zone, it goes to the exile zone instead. So we only get one more sort of bite at the apple, but that means the Unearth trigger is gonna, the delayed trigger from it that will exile this at the end step will go on the stack at the end step at the same time as this end step trigger. So as long as we have this one resolved first, it will still count the Platoon Dispenser in addition to the 2 or more other creatures. I guess it doesn't care since it's other. But yeah, we could be getting rid of this. What's especially nice though, is it only cares about it going to exile. So if it's going to exile anyway, maybe we use the Platoon Dispenser when we've unearthed it to craft something. We're gonna need an artifact for that anyway, since we're gonna lose the Platoon Dispenser in, no matter what, we might as well use it. So we can craft with it, and then it goes to exile, and there we go, we're done. Cool. We've seen the Might Stone and Weak Stone. It enters, and one of the 2 things it can do is draw us 2 cards. And we also have Thought Monitor. This is 6 and a blue, so a pretty expensive 2/2 flyer. It's an artifact creature construct. It flies, it's a 2/2, and it has affinity for artifacts, so it's not actually that expensive. In this deck, it is pretty uncommon to pay more than a single blue mana for this card. We're gonna have so many other artifacts in play. Even paying 3 for this is great, because 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer is a Wind Drake. 5 mana for a 2/2 flyer is a Mull Drifter, and this is that too, because when it enters, we draw 2 cards. So yeah, being able to spend a single blue, draw 2, and keep a 2/2 flyer is usually what we're doing with the Thought Monitor, and it's pretty sweet for us if we can. So that covers our card advantage section. Let's talk now about our acceleration, which as usual I've just tagged as ramp, as a shorthand. Obviously, I mentioned Sol Ring before, we're running it. It's 1 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. Yeah, it's very powerful. Of course you want to run this in your deck. Wayfarer's Bauble, we've already talked about. Pretty good. Arcane Signet, also really great. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact that if we tap it, we get 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, white, blue, or red. So this is a 2 mana untapped mana rock that's already great. It makes all 3 of our colors even better. Hard to beat. Similarly is Felwar Stone. Felwar Stone is also a 2 mana untapped artifact that makes mana, but it makes mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So while it is possible that we might be playing against 3 opponents who are only playing black, green, or colorless, if that's not the case, then if one of our opponents is running red, then this is a 2 mana untapped rock that taps for red, or for any mana that we want to put into our generic mana costs, of which we have many in this artifact deck. So Felwar Stone is great for us, and it just gets better whenever an opponent plays more lands in our colors. Or if they have something like Chromatic Lantern that makes all their lands tap for anything, now our Felwar Stone taps for anything, because it's the same as their lands. Pretty good either way. Liquid Metal Torque is another 2 mana rock. This taps for colorless, or we can tap it and target non-land permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. The reason this is great is because we have a number of different things that care about the number of artifacts we have. It has to be a permanent, which means it's got to be something that's in play, and it can't be a land. But if we have anything that's a non-artifact permanent in play, we can make it into an artifact to help out anything else that might care about artifacts. For example, any of our cards that have Improvise or have Affinity, any of our cards that get a Power and Toughness bonus or have a calculation like those Gnome soldiers that care about the number of creatures and or artifacts we control. Well, we make one of our enchantments into an artifact with Liquid Metal Torque, and it'll add to that. But one of the biggest benefits of this is the fact that the Golden Gear Colossus can flip a double-faced artifact when it enters or attacks. We have a couple of cards that are non-artifacts that are double-faced. We've already seen Elish Norn. If we make Elish Norn, or if she's backside up already with the Argent Etchings, if we make the Argent Etchings an artifact using Liquid Metal Torque, we can then use the Golden Gear Colossus to flip it to the other side without having to go through waiting till we get to the 3rd chapter on the Argent Etchings, or paying 3 mana and sacrificing 3 creatures to Elish Norn to flip her. We can use Liquid Metal Torque and our commander to flip her as well, and that seems pretty great. If we're using the Golden Gear Colossus to flip Elish Norn, then we're going to be making 5 incubator tokens, and they won't be triggering our commander's front side because the Golden Gear Colossus is face up. But it is an option. We've got good options here. Yeah, either way. This is also very good for our other card that is double-faced but is an enchantment, but we'll talk about that once we get to it. It'll be in this section. Next up, we have all 3 of Talismans. We'll talk with the Talisman of Progress as our example. This is 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for colorless, or it taps for white or blue if we're willing to let it do 1 damage to us. All the talismans work this way, they just produce different colors of mana. Creativity is blue and red, Talisman of Conviction is red and white. So all of these are excellent. These are 2 mana untapped rocks that make the mana we're mostly going to be using in this deck, which is often colorless, or if we need to have it make a color of mana, then what determines that we need that? Well, it's the difference between whether or not we can cast a spell or not. And if it's the difference between casting a spell or not, then of course we want to let it do a damage to us. A single life in our 40 life format is nothing compared to being able to play 1 more spell that turn, and maybe the next turn, maybe the next turn. These talismans, even though they can do damage to us, if we take 6, 7, 8 damage over the course of the game from our talismans, that means we've cast 6, 7, or 8 more spells than we otherwise would have. That's worth it every time. Great cards. We've seen Sunbird Standard. It's a Manalith, a 3 mana artifact that taps for 1 of any color. We know everything else that it does. Crystal Skull, Isu Spyglass, taps for blue. That's pretty good. We've actually seen these other 2. Geology Enthusiast makes us Power Stones at our end step. That's pretty good. And Might Stone and Weak Stone is a big Power Stone. It taps for 2 Power Stone mana. The one card we haven't seen yet is Storm the Vault. This is the other card that we might want to flip using our Liquid Metal Torque and our commander. So this is a legendary enchantment for 2, a blue and a red, that says whenever one or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, we make a treasure token. So free treasures, and that seems pretty good every time we're doing combat damage to players. Combat damage to players happens in this deck for sure, but it may be less than some other decks that are more aggressive that Storm the Vault might go into. However, at the beginning of our end step, if we control 5 or more artifacts, we transform Storm the Vault on its own to Vault of Catlacan. This is a legendary land that taps for 1 mana of any color, or taps for an amount of blue equal to the number of artifacts we control. This is Tolarian Academy. It is so powerful in this deck. It's one of the other ways that we have, beyond the core and the backside of Azur's Gateway, that can be a land that taps for an enormous amount of mana. And Vault of Catlacan can tap for 1 mana of any color as well. If we don't need a whole bunch of blue, but we need a red, we've got it right here. That's in addition to whatever treasures it may have made. So if we don't have, let's say, enough artifacts, because maybe we had to craft away some of the artifacts in play that we had in play in order to transform our commander, but we kept our Liquid Metal Torque, we can then use Liquid Metal Torque on Storm the Vault so that it can transform to Vault of Catlacan using the trigger from the Golden Gear Colossus, whether the enters or attack trigger, depending on how we time it. So another good option for us here, and just a fun trick to be able to pull. But oftentimes we don't have to, because having 5 or more artifacts at our end step is trivial in this deck. So that covers our acceleration section. Let's talk now about our discount section. This is not something I usually run, especially so many cards in this section. But the rule I have is I don't run a card that reduces a cost unless I have at least 40 other cards in the deck that have that cost reduced by that card. So Enthusiastic Mechanaut, for example, is a blue and a red for a 2/2 artifact creature Goblin Artificer with flying that makes all of our artifact spells cost 1 less to cast. Well, you can see we have 51 artifacts in this deck, but how many of those are artifact lands? Well, 7 of them are, which means we have 44 cards in this deck that are artifact spells. Enthusiastic Mechanaut is one of them, so that means this is able to reduce 43 other cards. Is that true though? We have, I think, 3 cards in this deck, otherwise, that have no generic mana cost. Our commander and a couple of those double-faced artifacts. It's possible we might not be quite there at 40, but we're pretty close. And it does still apply to our commander if the commander has a commander tax attached to it. This will still reduce that cost because additional costs are added to the total cost before reductions. So yeah, Enthusiastic Mechanaut is a 2/2 flyer for a blue and a red that makes our artifacts cost 1 less. Compared to the Ethereum Sculptor, which is a 1/2 non-flyer for 1 and a blue that makes our artifact spells cost 1 less. It's an artifact creature, Vidalcan Artificer. So by making this mana into a red mana, we're getting an extra power and we're getting flying from the Mechanaut. But we're running both because why wouldn't we? They're both 2/2s, or 2 mana spells that make all of our other artifacts, which is most of our spells in our deck, cheaper. We're going to talk about Urza in a moment. Let's talk about Sammy next. Sammy is Sammy Wildcat Captain, 4, a red and a white, for a 4/4 legendary human artificer rogue with double strike, vigilance, and spells you cast have affinity for artifacts. This is a crazy powerful card. Just really, really strong. Once we have Sammy out, which is not that easy, it's 6 mana, but Sammy is able to discount all of our spells by 1 for every artifact we have, which means oftentimes when Sammy comes out, every one of our spells doesn't have a generic mana cost anymore. It just has a colored mana cost. Or for any of these reduction effects, it's worth noting, if we were going to cast something like Azur's Gateway, which only costs colorless mana, well, if we have the Mechanaut and the Sculptor in play, they're both reducing its cost by 1, so Azur's Gateway is free. If Sammy's in play and we've got 2 artifacts out already. Same thing is true. Azur's Gateway is free because it has affinity for artifacts, so it costs an amount less equal to the number of artifacts we control, which might be 0. Or it might be a total of 0. Either way, Sammy's very powerful, really changes the game. I love having a couple of cards in each deck that make a game where it comes out like texturally different. And in this deck, there's a lot of those cards, and Sammy's one of them. Also, if you're interested, check out the video's description for a commander deck piloted by Sammy Wildcat Captain. I built this back when Edge of Eternities was coming out, and it's pretty fun. Last in this section is Urza Lord Protector, a card that we got to see earlier with the Mightstone and Weakstone. This is 1, a white and a blue for a 2/4 legendary human artificer, one of the most evil characters in all of Magic, holding the end of Dominaria's age that it was in, the Golgothian Silex, that says artifact, instant, and sorcery spells we cost 1 less to cast. So this affects all of our artifact spells, as well as our instants and sorceries, of which there are 2 each. But that's not nothing. That's just a little bit of a reduction, and it stacks with all the other reductions we've seen. In addition, Urza Lord Protector has the ability that if we pay 7 generic mana, and if we both own and control Urza Lord Protector and an artifact named the Mightstone and Weakstone, we exile them, then meld them into Urza Planeswalker at sorcery speed. If so, we get this Planeswalker, one of the most powerful Planeswalkers ever printed, because it requires us to take Urza himself and the Mightstone and Weakstone and combine them into this giant double-sided card, which is okay with me because we've got a lot of double-sided cards in this deck, double-faced cards. So Urza Planeswalker is a 7 loyalty Urza Planeswalker, the only one, that says we can activate loyalty abilities of Urza Planeswalker twice each turn rather than only once. Those abilities are +2 artifact, instants, and sorcery spells we cast this turn cost 2 less to cast, and we gain 2 life. So that's just persistent for the rest of the turn. That might be just one of the 2 things we do. For +1, we can draw 2 cards and discard a card. For 0, we can make 2 1/1 soldier artifact creature tokens. For -3, we can exile a non-land permanent, and if Urza has been allowed to stay in the battlefield and has gotten up to 10 loyalty, we can -10 him, and artifacts and planeswalkers we control gain indestructible until end of turn and destroy all non-land permanents otherwise. So crazy, crazy, crazy. Incredibly powerful. We get to do 2 things every turn. If we're able to get to the point where we can meld Urza and the Mightstone and Weakstone, we want to, because it's so cool. It's just a big moment in a big game. So yeah, I wanted to, since they both work in this deck, I put them both in, and I think it's a fun thing to try and do. Even if you don't win the game, if you are able to play with Urza Planeswalker, you feel like you did. So yeah, pretty cool. That is our discounts section. Let's go on to our removal section. This is interaction, really. So we're running Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares. Both are very similar. They are both instants, they're both a single white mana, and they both exile target creature and give that creature's controller a little kickback. Swords to Plowshares gives that creature's controller life equal to the creature's power, and Path to Exile lets that creature's controller rampant growth. They search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. I run both of these in basically all of my white decks because they're both very powerful, very cheap, unconditional creature removal. Sounds great. Next, we've got Dragonspark Reactor. This is 1 and a red for an artifact that says whenever it or another artifact we control enters, we put a charge counter on it. Again, charge counters just used by the reactor. And then, if we pay 4 and sack it, the reactor will deal damage equal to the number of charge counters on it to target player, and that much damage to up to 1 target creature. So we have to be able to hit a player with this, meaning if we're down to just 1 last opponent and they have hexproof, we have to target ourselves with it. Not something we want to do. But we can oftentimes just kill an opponent with this, and at the very least, we're probably going to kill a creature with it. It does not say that that creature has to be controlled by that player either. So if we want, maybe we've got an opponent that's down to like 10 life and we've got 14 counters on the Dragonspark Reactor. Not hard to do because it does not say non-token artifact enters. We might be able to kill an opponent, that opponent with 10 life left, as well as the scariest creature on a different opponent's playmat. Very cool. Lodestone Needle, we've already seen. It enters at flash speed and lets us tap down an artifact or creature and put 2 stun counters on it. Same thing with Spring-Loaded Saw Blades. We flash it in and it does 5 damage to a target tapped creature and opponent controls. Summoned at the Gateway is a sorcery speed disenchant on non-token artifacts or enchantments, but we also get an Incubate. Imprisoned in the Moon is next. This is 2 and a blue for an aura that enchants a creature, land, or planeswalker and makes that enchanted permanent into a colorless land that taps for colorless mana and causes it to lose all other card types and abilities. So this is a solid removal spell for a annoying planeswalker. If someone else has gotten Urza Planeswalker, let's say, for a annoying land, that's doing cool land things like a Rogue's Passage, making an opponent's Voltron commander unblockable or something, we can imprison it in the Moon. But most of the time, we're hitting a creature with this, and now that creature's controller has a land that taps for colorless, so that's helpful for them, I suppose. But if we hit their commander with this, then unless they have a way to either interact with their own lands or deal with this enchantment, their commander is locked down and just giving them colorless mana and doing nothing else for them until they have a way to interact with this enchantment or with their own lands. Because it's not the same as saying, I'm going to put Eaten by Piranhas or Witness Protection or something like that, Frogify, on your commander so that you can just block with it and get it back into the command zone. Imprisoned at the Moon is a great way to shut down commanders or any other problematic creature, land, or planeswalker for as long as it takes for them to try and find a way to get it out from under that. So yeah, I like it. We've seen the Argenta Masticore. It makes all of the cards in our hand into removal spells when we discard them during our upkeep. We've seen the Mightstone and Weakstone. It can give a creature -5/-5 until end of turn when it enters. And last we have Riptide Gearhulk. This is 1 double white and double blue, so kind of complicated to cast, for a 2/5 artifact creature construct that has double strike and prowess. Prowess means whenever we cast a non-creature spell, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So if we cast several non-creature spells, it's going to stack up and up, up and up and up, and it has double strike when we attack with it or when we block with it. But most of all, when it enters, for each opponent, we put up to 1 target non-land permanent that player controls into its library, into its owner's library rather, third from the top. So it's not just a removal spell, it's a tuck spell. So if they want, if we hit their commander with this, they can choose to put it into the command zone instead. They don't have to, but if they choose to, they have to choose right then when it would be put there. If they say, oh, I'm just going to put it in my library, I'll just draw it in a couple of turns, and then someone says, hey, shuffle your library, then they have to shuffle it away, and they don't, at that point, get another opportunity to put it in the command zone. They only get to move it to the command zone rather than into their library the moment it would first go into their library. That's how the replacement effect works. And if it's not their commander, well, that non-land permanent is just into their library. Now they better hope that they either draw it if they want it back, or that they don't shuffle in the meantime. Yeah, pretty cool. That is our interaction section. We are running 2 Wraths in this deck, which are right here. We've got Elesh Norn, as we've seen already. Elesh Norn, we'll do this. On her backside, the Argent Etchings can destroy all other permanents other than artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians. We're also running Organic Extinction, which is an expensive card, 8 generic mana and 2 white for a sorcery, but it has Improvise, meaning we can tap our artifacts and each one pays for 1 of the generic mana cost of this. So it is likely not going to be that expensive for us with all our artifacts floating around. And then it destroys all non-artifact creatures, which our commander is an artifact, so that seems pretty good. Other opponents might have artifact creatures as well, but probably not as many as ours. So, as we do rather. So yeah, Organic Extinction is another sweet board wipe for us. And that covers our support sections of the deck. We're going to talk now about all of our other sections. I guess we're going to talk about the Wincons since they're right here. Wincons, I have a section of for these are cards that oftentimes will just win us the game. We've seen Mirrodin Besieged with the Phyrexian option. We can make an opponent lose the game during our end step if we have 15 or more artifact cards in our graveyard. It's a possibility. We've also got Cyberdrive Awakener. This is 5 and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature construct with flying that gives all of our artifact creatures flying. And when it enters, each non-creature artifact we control becomes a 4/4 artifact creature until end of turn. So oftentimes, we might have so many token and non-token, non-creature artifacts in play that Cyberdrive Awakener makes our entire board into a flight of angels, basically. A whole bunch of flying 4/4s that we swing in, and we can kill sometimes more than one opponent all at once. This is another reason why sometimes it's fine if you have an incubator token with a couple of counters on it and you don't want to transform it. Because if that's the case, it's an untransformed incubator token, which means it's a non-creature artifact, which means Cyberdrive Awakener comes in, makes it into a 4/4 artifact creature. We could transform it then if we wanted to, or during combat, and now that 4/4 is getting the benefit of those counters that are on it. Making it a 6/6 out of nowhere seems pretty good. Cyberdrive Awakener is a great way to just swing and either end games or end opponents as threats. And then, if the Awakener sticks around, well, it's still a 4/4 flyer that gives all of our other artifact creatures flying. Our non-creature artifacts won't remain 4/4s past the end of our turn, but it's not that hard for us to get the Cyberdrive Awakener into our graveyard and then reanimate it as well. So we'd be able to get its enters trigger again. It's a good option. Also, if we've got plenty of artifact creatures, like our commander, just having flying and just continuing to have flying for as long as the Awakener remains in play is also pretty good, and they can close things out. As with all of these sections, there are more cards tagged these ways in the Considering section at the bottom of the deck page, just so you know. But those are the ones that I've tagged as Wincons for now. So let's go to our Payoffs section. These are cards that reward us for doing what we were going to do anyway, mostly for playing artifacts. So Dowsing Device triggers every time we have an artifact enter, including itself, and can flip then if we have 4 or more artifacts. That's pretty good. Dragonspark Reactor also triggers and puts a charge counter on itself when it or another artifact we control enters. Ravenous Robots from the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles set is 1 and a red for a 2/1 artifact creature robot that says whenever we cast an artifact spell, we make a 1/1 colorless robot artifact creature token. So we're making more tokens and making a lot of them. Getting Ravenous Robots out on turn 2, so good. It really changes the way that the deck will play. We can also pay a red and tap it to give all of our creature tokens haste until end of turn, which can really work well with our Cyberdrive Awakener if we've made a whole bunch of other creature tokens like Phyrexians or whatever. If the Cyberdrive Awakener makes our incubator tokens that we have not transformed into 4/4s, we can give them haste that turn. Yeah, there's ways to make this work. It's pretty sweet. Next up, Chromehost Seed Shark. Of course, every time we cast a non-creature spell, we get a lot of those. We get to incubate X and make that incubator token. Forensic Gadgeteer lets us investigate every time we cast an artifact spell. Mirrored and Besieged, if we choose the Mirrored side, lets us make a 1/1 mirror when we cast an artifact spell. Psy lets us make a 1/1 Thopter with flying when we cast an artifact spell. Master's Guide Mural, once it's transformed, lets us tap it to make a 4/4 white and blue golem if we've had an artifact enter that turn, including itself. Next is Kappa Cannoneer. This is an incredible card, 5 and a blue for a 4/4 artifact creature Turtle Warrior with Improvise, which we've seen already. We can use our artifacts to pay for the generic mana costs of it if we want. It is a 4/4 with Ward 4, and whenever it or another artifact we control enters, we put a 1/1 counter on it, and it can't be blocked this turn. The Kappa Cannoneer becomes enormous, very fast, and is basically unblockable every turn. So while it is a great blocker, why would we do that if just a few hits from it is enough to take an opponent down by like half their life, which may be where they started by the time we started attacking with it. Finally, from the Fallout decks, we have the Pridwin Steel Flagship. This is 4 and double white for a 6/6 legendary vehicle with crew 2. Notably, the front side of Tetzin is 2 power, and it flies. And it says whenever another non-token artifact we control enters, we make a 2/2 white human knight creature token that has, this token has +2/+2 as long as an artifact entered the battlefield under your control this turn. So we get tokens that can become 4/4s. They don't continue to get +2/+2 over and over in the same turn, because it doesn't say each time an artifact enters. It says as long as an artifact entered. So if you had one artifact enter, it's getting +2/+2. If you've had 4 artifacts enter, then an artifact has entered, so it's getting +2/+2. This is not a triggered ability, it's a continuous effect, it's a static ability. So these are going to be 4/4s or 2/2s and nothing else. Still, being able to have just one of those means you've got something that can crew the Pridwin, which again is a 6/6 flyer. Pretty good. That covers our payoff section. Similarly, we have a synergy section. These are cards that rather than reward us for what we're already doing, they help us do what we're doing. So for example, Dowsing Device does trigger when we have artifacts enter, but it cares about the number of artifacts we have. When we have 4 or more artifacts, we flip it, and Geode Grotto gives a power bonus when we activate it equal to the number of artifacts we control. Liquid Metal Torque gives us the ability to make our things into artifacts if they weren't already. That seems pretty good. Helps with a lot of different parts of our deck. Emery cares about the number of artifacts we have because she has affinity for artifacts. Edgar is a card we haven't seen yet. This is Edgar, Master Machinist from the Final Fantasy Commander product. 2, a red and a white for a 2/4 legendary human artificer noble that says during each of your turns, you may cast an artifact spell from your graveyard, and if you cast a spell this way, that artifact enters tapped. So this is 1 artifact per turn, similarly to Emery. Emery doesn't say we have to do it on our turn, so if we're bringing back an artifact that has flash, we could do it on an opponent's turn, but we have to choose that artifact as part of Emery's activated ability, which means we could activate it, targeting an artifact, an opponent could eat it out of our graveyard, and then we don't get to cast anything that turn from our graveyard with Emery. Edgar lets us just cast something during our turns, however, and if we do, it comes in tapped, which is not always relevant to the cards we're bringing back, so great. Also, Edgar has a really interestingly named ability, which is Tools. Just Tools. Whenever Edgar attacks, it gets +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is the greatest mana value among artifacts we control. Sometimes that's going to be 7. That's as high as we go in this deck. So a 9/4, pretty cool. So good as an attacker and good as a recursion piece. We've seen Storm the Vault. Storm the Vault cares about the number of artifacts we have because we want to count up to 5 at our end step so that we can transform it. Thousand Moon Smithy cares about us tapping 5 untapped artifacts and/or creatures during our end step, or during our pre-combat main phase in order to transform it, but more importantly, it makes these Gnome Soldier tokens with power and toughness each equal to the number of artifacts and creatures we control. That's the synergy there. Kappa Cannoneer has Improvise and gives us that kind of discount that way. Sammy gives all of our spells affinity, and Thought Monitor itself has affinity. So lots of different ways that these things are working for us. That covers our synergy section. Let's talk about our recursion, which is so important in this deck. We've seen all but one of these. So Emery gives us the ability to bring one of our artifacts back each turn. We have to pay for it, but that's once every turn. Arcade lets us do that each turn with artifacts or with human spells, as long as their mana value is equal to or less than the number of quest counters on Arcade, so we have to build that up for him. Conqueror's Galleon on the back side, we can pay 6 and tap, and bring any card from our graveyard to our hand. It's pretty good. We've already seen Edgar, lets us do something similar to Emery, and once per turn bring back an artifact. Finally, we have Salvation Engine in this section. This is 4 and a white for a 6/10 vehicle that crews for 6. That's a lot of crewing, but it's a 6/10. And it gives all other artifact creatures we control +2/+2. So it's actually not that hard to crew it. It's sort of like it has crew 4. Or maybe if we have 2 1/1s in play, they become 3/3s and we can have both of them crew it. Pretty good. It also says when it attacks, we return up to 1 target artifact card from our graveyard to the battlefield. Don't even have to pay for it. We just have to attack with the Salvation Engine. So pretty good here. That is our recursion section. Let's talk about our token section. This is not every artifact token we have in the deck. This is just token creatures, and that's what we care about in this section. So Clayfire Bricks, if we were to craft it into the Cosmium Kiln, it will make 2 of those Gnome artifact creature tokens. If we don't craft it, but we otherwise transform it, or if we do craft it, however it gets transformed, it gives this Anthem effect to our creatures. But remember, it only gives us these tokens if it enters the battlefield. Ravenous Robots, on the other hand, gives us a 1/1 robot every time we cast an artifact spell. Chromehost Seed Shark makes us incubator tokens, which are not creatures initially, but can become them. Mirrored and Besieged, if we choose the mirror inside, gives us a 1/1 mirror whenever we cast an artifact. Sai gives us a 1/1 Thopter with flying whenever we cast an artifact. Elish Norn can make a bunch of those incubator tokens. Thousand Moon Smithy will make one and can make more of these Gnome Soldier artifact creature tokens. Now we have another Urza. Different Urza than before. This is Urza Prince of Krug. 2, a white and a blue, for a 2/3 legendary human artificer that gives all of our artifact creatures +2/+2, similar to our Salvation Engine. So another nice big pump effect. In addition, Urza says we can pay 6 and make a token that's a copy of target artifact we control, except it's a 1/1 soldier in addition to its other types. So if we make an artifact creature copy of an artifact creature, it's going to be a 1/1 soldier. It's going to add that soldier type to that artifact creature's types, and it's going to overwrite its power and toughness. If it's a non-creature that we're making a copy of, well, now it's a creature. It's a 1/1 soldier in addition. So it is worth remembering that these are going to be artifact creatures. If you make a copy of your Soul Ring, it's a 1/1 soldier that taps for 2 colorless mana, but it can't do it right now because it just entered the battlefield and it has Summoning Sickness. So things that are worth recognizing that way. But if you were going to make a copy of your Salvation Engine, it's going to get that +2/+2 or going to give that +2/+2 to all other creatures, just like the regular Salvation Engine does. And when it attacks, you're going to get to bring something back. Pretty good. So yeah, being able to make copies of our stuff, even though they are creatures, the creature is almost a drawback here, but it can be helpful to us for the things that care about our artifact creatures attacking or doing damage, that sort of thing. Next is Master's Guide Mural. It enters and makes us a 4/4 golem, and on the other side, it can tap to make a 4/4 golem if we've had an artifact enter the battlefield under our control this turn. Platoon Dispenser for 3 and a white can make us a 1/1 soldier artifact creature. Brutaclad we haven't seen yet. Brutaclad is 4, a blue and a red, for a 4/4 legendary artifact creature Phyrexian Artificer that gives all of our creature tokens haste. Very, very strong for us, in the same way that our Mouser, the robot from before, from Turtles, the Ravenous Robots, can give our creature tokens haste until end of turn. We don't have to activate that with Brutaclad. Just all of our creature tokens have haste. In addition, at the beginning of combat on our turn, we make a 2/1 blue Phyrexian Mirror artifact creature token, and we can stop there. We can just have that token. It has haste, because it's a creature token. But if we don't want to stop there, we can choose a token we control, and if we do, all of our tokens become a copy of that token. So if we have a Salvation Engine copy that we made using Urza, that's giving all other artifact creatures +2/+2, we have Brutaclad make us this 2/1 mirror, and then we've got, let's say, 3 or 4 clues in play. Well, we choose the token that Urza made that is a Salvation Engine, a 1/1 Salvation Engine. That mirror and our 3 or 4 clues are all going to become 1/1 Salvation Engine tokens that are all giving +2/+2 to all of our other artifact creatures, which means they're all being affected by each other's +2/+2. So they're all, depending on how many we have, 9/9s, 11/11s, whatever it may be, just becomes huge, and our whole board is going to be huge as we're swinging in because they're all giving that benefit to our commander as well. Yeah, lots and lots of fun things we can do with this with Brutaclad. It's just worth remembering that if we choose a token as part of this effect, all of our other tokens are going to become a copy of that token, and it's not until end of turn, it's permanent. So if we choose a clue token, for example, because we think we need more clues, we don't get to choose which of our token creatures are going to stop being creatures and start being clues. It's all of them. So we lose all of our gnomes, all of our gnome soldiers that we may have made, our golems, whatever it may be. It just It genericizes. There's a word I'm looking for, but it makes all of our tokens the same. So we want to make sure we choose a token that's a good one, because if they're creatures, they're going to have haste. So that covers our tokens section. Let's talk a little bit about the pump that we've seen all of already, but we'll look at it. Clay-fired bricks on its backside as Cosmium Kiln is an Anthem effect. Gives all of our creatures +1/+1. Dowsing Device, whenever we have an artifact enter, including itself, can give something +1/+1 in haste until end of turn, and can pump something up as Geode Grotto. Elish Norn, the second chapter of the Argent Etchings, gives all of our creatures +1/+1 and double strike until end of turn. Urza gives all of our artifact creatures +2/+2, and Salvation Engine gives all of our other artifact creatures +2/+2. Lot of pump, lots of ways to win with it. So that's that section. We have a little bit of a protection section. Protection, right here. We have a couple that we've seen already. Thaumatic Compass on its backside can untap an target attacking creature that an opponent controls and remove it from combat, protecting us. Elish Norn, on her front side, is not real protective, but it does disincentivize our opponents from damaging or attacking us or our permanents. So, slightly protective. But we've also got the Swifties. Swiftfoot Boots are 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature hexproof and haste. Haste can be relevant for some of our things in this deck, hexproof even more so, especially on our commander. So being able to attack with our commander with haste, once it's transformed into the Golden Gear Colossus, and to keep it protected with hexproof for the low cost of equipping for 1, seems pretty good to me. That is our protection section. We have a little bit of evasion, which we've seen already. Oticlon Landmark on the backside can jump something when it attacks. Braided Net can tap things down, which is a little bit of an evasive thing. Because we can get past them, I suppose, when they're tapped down and they can't block. And Cyberdrive Awakener gives all of our artifact creatures flying. That's pretty great. That is our evasion section, and the last section I have listed here we've already talked about, which is our Wincons. So we're done with that, and that means we're done with all the spells in our deck. As usual, that means now it's time for us to go over our land base, starting with our basic lands. We're running 13 basics here. It is mostly a blue deck, slightly less white and significantly less red, but I equalized these just a little bit so that we could ensure that we've got enough red mana available to us on turn 3 to be able to cast our commander. We also have other sources of these colors beyond just the dual lands you're about to see, but of course I used the Lost Caverns of Ixalan printings with the Adam Packet lands. So there we go. We're running 3 bicycle lands, one of which is brand new. Coastal Peak just got printed as at time of recording in the Strixhaven, the Secrets of Strixhaven decks. But this is how these bicycle lands work. These are dual-typed lands, so they are 2 different basic types that come in tapped, and thereby tap for both colors that we might need. They also have cycling for 2 generic mana, so that we can pay 2 and discard them to draw a card if we need to. Maybe we're desperate for a card, maybe it's just late in the game and we don't need any more mana. It's a good option for us to have. Otherwise, though, it's just a tap land, and that's fine for us. Each one is different in that they are different basic land types, and therefore they make different colors, but that's what we care about. If you wanted to upgrade these, I suppose you could upgrade them to the shock lands. Shock lands are more likely to come in untapped as duels. Those are very powerful, but they don't give you the option to cycle them. It's usually something worth giving up power-wise, but they do cost a lot more, so there you go. We've got these 5 fixing lands in the deck. Obviously, we're running Command Tower. This is an untapped land that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, just like Arcane Signet, so it is a untapped tri-land. That's so powerful, of course we're going to run this. We would run this if it came in tapped, which Path of Ancestry does. This is a tap land with the same text as Command Tower and Arcane Signet, but it also says when we cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry 1. Our commander is a gnome. How many gnomes do we have in this deck? 2. Cool. So there is 1 other creature in this deck that will let us get a free scry when we use the Path of Ancestry mana to cast it, but it's mostly that our commander, of course, shares a creature type with itself, so we're going to get that scry off of it. Even if we didn't ever get a scry with Path of Ancestry, the fact that it is a tap land that makes all 3 of our colors makes it worth running. Similarly, Exotic Orchard is not a tap land, and taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So this is to Felwar Stone, the way Arcane Signet is to our command tower. Everything I said about the Felwar Stone is just as true here. It's also cool to recognize that if an opponent has an Exotic Orchard, then their Exotic Orchard sees our other lands, and our Exotic Orchard sees their Exotic Orchard. So our Exotic Orchard would then essentially tap for any color that a land we control could produce. That seems cool. We're running Myriad Landscape. This is a tap land that taps for colorless, but if we pay 2, tap, and sack it, we can search our library for up to 2 basic land cards that share a land type. So in this deck, 2 basic plains, 2 basic islands, or 2 basic mountains. Then we put those on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. So while this is slow, comes in tapped, requires us to pay mana and sack it, and the lands we find come in tapped, it is 1 land drop that turns into 2 lands that are colored. So it is acceleration in our land base, just a little bit slow. Sometimes not that bad, especially if we've got Myriad Landscapes sitting around for several turns and we happen into one of our situations where we're making a huge amount of mana. It can act as a little bit of a mana sink in that way. Temple of the False God is next. This is a land, not everyone loves it, but this is an untapped land that makes Soul Ring mana. It's a soul land. It's just that we can't tap it for mana at all unless we control at least 4 other lands, so 5 or more including itself. So while this is not acceleration early on, if your opening hand is like Demolition Field and Temple of the False God and no other lands, definitely mulligan that. This can definitely jump you on turn 5 from making 4 mana to making 6, and that's acceleration. It's just not early acceleration, but you don't need extra mana only during the early game. So Temple of the False God is fine. We're running all 3 Pain lands. These are the same in their text as our talismans. They are untapped, they make colorless mana, or they make 1 of 2 colors if we're willing to let them do damage to us. Everything I said about the talismans is true about these 2. These are untapped duels. Yeah, just run them. We've got 3 Scrylands, all 3 of the ones in our colors. These are tap lands that make 1 of 2 colors, and when they enter, they scry 1. Pretty good for us. Gives us a little card selection. Makes 2 of our colors. That's all we need. If we wanted to upgrade these to the Surveil lands, we sure could. Be a lot more money, but still pretty good, and Surveil does put cards in our graveyard, which we do care about. Mystic Monastery is our tri-land. This is a tap land that taps for all of our colors. So great. It's a worse version of Path of Ancestry, which is a worse version of Command Tower, and it's still worth running. If you wanted to upgrade this, Rogran Triome from Ikoria, Lair of Behemoths, is the Triome version of this. That's pretty good, also pretty expensive. Finally, we have these 3 utility lands. Archway of Innovation is a land that enters tapped unless we control an island, which is our most common color, and we've got 5 basic islands plus plenty of typed lands. I guess at least the bicycle lands. Archway of Innovation taps for blue, or we can pay a blue and tap it, and the next spell we cast this turn has Improvise. So we can accelerate ourselves just a little bit with our artifacts if we're willing to spend 2 mana on top of whatever it costs. So sometimes worth it, sometimes not, but it's a good option to have, and it makes the color that we are most using in our deck. Buried Ruin is next. This is a untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to return an artifact from our graveyard to our hand. Just a tiny little bit of extra recursion in case we need it. Great, that's all we want. Finally, we have Demolition Field. This is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to destroy a non-basic land an opponent controls. I know what you're thinking. The decks that I build are targeted at pods that usually don't like mana disruption. And that's fair. That's not what everyone's looking for in Commander. But like I mentioned earlier, you have to have something that can deal with a problematic non-basic, like that Voltron player's Rogue's Passage. Or if you have someone who is keeping themselves alive with their Glacial Chasm and you can't get in for any damage. Something that's enhancing someone else's game plan or preventing us from executing ours is fair game for targeting with interaction, I should say. Demolition Field is my answer to that. Like the one card in the deck that can deal with a problematic non-basic, basically. And this is a good one, because when you use it, we destroy a non-basic an opponent controls, and that opponent then gets to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped. And so do we. So neither we nor they are down a land, but we've taken care of something that has been problematic for us at the table, and both players, assuming they had basics left in their library, have gotten an untapped basic land into play that they're able to use right away. Yeah, Demolition Field, hard to have a problem with this if you understand that interaction is fine, but you still don't like mana disruption. So yeah, pretty good. And that about sums it up. Thanks again to InKing727 for requesting this commander, as well as for waiting for me to fit it into my weekly rotation. If you'd like to request a commander deck and you are the patient sort, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, everyone. Remember, if you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider becoming a member of the channel, and remember most of all that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.